Greetings. Welcome to another video. This is something that I probably should have done a long time ago in regards to how helpful this could be both to beginners and people that are advanced who tend to get stuck. But the theme of today is going to be sketching a track that is only using simple, or rather maybe not so good sounds. I think that the point of this is to focus more so on the compositional side of things and let go of the timbral things while still, how do you say, trying to focus on what makes the genre what it is. I do think that there is a little clause in here that aesthetic is very important depending on what it is that you're trying to go for, because not only do you have a genre, but do you have a certain subgenre of it or a certain depiction of what emotion you're trying to convey within the style of music that you're portraying. And while I do think that it is super helpful, uh, it depends on what you're trying to cultivate. And so in this particular case, what we're going to do is use the most basic of basic. I'm going to walk you through some very simple sound design, and we're really not going to try to make this even sound good. It's more so just a means of, okay, can I put something together? The whole other point that I want to bring up with this is that I think that this is a great opportunity to talk about something that Cage left with me a while ago. And he said that a lot of people are trying to recreate the music that they like, but I think what their big end goal is that they're trying to express the feelings that they felt whenever they hear the music that they look up to. And that was a pretty profound thing. And I want to try to capture a glimpse of that and get certain things of this genre right without necessarily having to have the most high quality sounds. All right, that was a lot of introductory talk. So if you're still here, let's go ahead and discuss what this is supposed to be. So first and foremost, we're going to be doing a halftime track. Surprise, surprise. With that being said, though, we are just going to use probably just Bitwig stuff. And I wanted to tackle another challenge with this as well, of not trying to make this sound as good as I can, but more so, can I make something that is still in the spirit of what I normally do? And if I can accomplish this and I can achieve something that is, how do you say, serviceable, then we can take what we've learned from this and apply it to other DAWs. We can apply it to hardware. We can apply it to Koala Sampler on our iPhones or, little groove machines. And that's really what I'm wanting to pull out or evoke from this. So right off the bat, what we're doing is just pulling up this 808 kit. And I think that even just starting from here is okay. We don't really need this to do much. We just need something that's going to be the placement holder of what we're going to be throwing down for drums. And so I might do another one here. And instead of me randomizing this and stuff like I usually do, I'm just going to create some variations within this that give me a couple of different timbres. So let's go ahead and design that with the hats. I actually like that one. And then for this one, let's see if we can. Yeah, nice. Cool. All right, so that's really all I want to do with this. I don't want it to be too complicated with this kick here. We do want it to be a little bit punchy. Actually, I might keep this. And the one thing that I'm going to do with this is give it some more flam. And we're going to use an EQ to get out of something like this. Okay. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do, because again, I am not too concerned with everything, but it's more so of just an awareness thing, is I'm going to build the drums first. I already have a melody in mind, and I'm going to walk into that with you as well. But I am going to look at, after grouping this, what the general loudness of this is, and probably just make the track centered around that as opposed to trying to make it sound good. Because again, we're trying to avoid making anything, super insanely crazy or whatever. So let's group this. We'll call this drums. And I'm just going to pull this up. Sorry, I'm on Bitwig 5 and my keyboard shortcuts and stuff are not implemented just because Um, I've moved my initial template over to Big 6, but okay. Yeah, anyway. So let's get some data in here. Something kind of like so. And then let's get a clap in here. And then because like it's not going to matter what, like this isn't pitched, we could literally just do something like this. Right? Sweet. So I'm just going to hit J on all of these and move these to audio. And part of the thing is and I'm going to have another video about this at some point as well, but I'm going to group these, turn them off. The reason why I like working with audio is because it gives me a more detailed depiction of what I'm looking at. And the other thing is that if I want to make changes to this, or I want to do some kind of pitching or reversing or whatever, I can look at the waveform and study, I know that if I look at the waveform and it stops here, that it's going to stop here. If it's in MIDI, then sometimes it doesn't give me that information. The other thing is that I don't actually have to open up a secondary window below this in order to be able to uh, edit the thing. I can just do it on here, and it makes it a lot easier to work with. So the first thing that I want to do is probably pull this off and change the color of these to something different so that way it doesn't play tricks on my eyes. Interesting choice of colors, but whatever, it works. Good contrast, I guess. And so let's take the first hi-hat and we are going to just loop bar 1. So something like this. And there we go. And now we have a chance to play with these two, which I know that this one is going to be here because that's what I was thinking of. We're just going to lay down a hi-hat pattern. And I'm going to focus on just creating the groove from the jump. So let's go ahead and go like this. There we go. Sweet. Not too bad, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the clap over here. And then we've got our first little mock-up of a beat structure that we can actually work with. And what I want to do is I'm going to move it slightly over here because I want to think about how I'm going to make this melody work, which one big tip, which I already kind of messed up on, but something that might be super helpful for you is to not start your track on bar 1, start it somewhere in the middle over here. So that way you've got something that looks more of like a canvas where you're not starting on the left and you're not writing an essay, you know what I mean? You're creating a piece of art. So don't feel like you need to start from here. All right, so what I want to do is I want this to be super messed up. So this is a good start, but I'm going to add some syncopation to this and maybe even drag in another hat or something with what's going on. So yeah, actually, cool. Now, because we've gone and done all the legwork with this, we can go ahead and add our kick in here. And we don't really want a tail on this. And then the other thing is that I might want this to be a little bit more over here. Sweet. Now we can go ahead and add this here. And then I'm just going to add one more kick over this way. Why are you doing this? What is going on? Okay. What is happening here? Uh, my computer is not being the kindest to me as of late. So let's see where we're at with this. And then maybe we can do some cool, intricate movement within this. And remember, like, just because we're not focusing so much on the details of this, and when it, sorry, on the sound quality, it doesn't mean that we can't add detail and make it spruced up, you know? So we can do other finite things like this of adding rolls or now, within this, it makes it a little bit easier for us to apply other kinds of changes and other kinds of variations that we might normally skip over. So but I can say that this sounds pretty okay. So, it's got a groove, and I think that's what's most important. So now what we're going to do is I'm just going to look at how loud this is. Okay. I'm going to do one cheat code on here, and I'm not going to try to make this as loud as possible, but I'm just going to try to clip this a little bit so that way we're sitting around like -10. I don't know. Generally speaking, I try to get my kicks at like -6 and my snares around the same place. Usually snares are louder than kicks. They're also perceived louder than kicks because they have more high-end information and they usually have longer tails. But for all intents and purposes for this, we just need a general reference point of which to make everything else around. It's just good awareness for me to have, just because I'm gonna know kind of how loud this is, and it will give me a direction of where to place the other elements when we add to that. So that kick is at like -14, and what we can do is just turn this down by like 2 decibels. Cool. And we've got ourselves a little drum group. Now the next thing that we're going to do is go into something like Polymer. And I have a couple of melodies that I have in mind, and I'm just going to try to find that. And we are going to focus more so on the groove of the melody as opposed to how cool does this sound, because for the most part, we're probably just going to stick to sine waves or maybe saw waves or something. So the first thing that we're going to do is find the key. And one really good way to start to do this, if you have an idea, is to try to hum it out. And I'm not going to make anything that's going to be super compelling or original, but I have this little melody that's like West Coast vibes of like do 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 ba 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 da 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 bum. It's going to sound very different than when this actually comes out, but I need to figure out what that top note is, and then I can design everything. So okay, so one other thing that I'm going to do on this is we are going to turn this off. We are going to go into segments and turn this off. Sorry. Let's set this to a quarter note. Something kind of like that. So C. Okay, so we need to go. There it is. Okay. So that's very like Dr. Dre-esque, but um, it'll work. So we need to go boom, 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 boom. Oh crap. Well, what did I just play? Lol. Okay. So sorry that took so long. Do 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 boom boom. I'm gonna add the accents after. Cool. Now, within this melody, obviously it's pretty boring, right? But we can start to add some stuff to it. So um, let's go and for one, we're going to move every other one a little bit off. Just a little bit. A little off, just a little bit. And we're going to do that with this one. And then here we're going to add a do-do-do right there. There we go. And now within this, we will change this just a bit to a sawtooth. And from this point, this is something that we can just throw over the top of this if we wanted to. So if we can see if it works. So cool. The next piece of this is to do another melody because this actually is going to be the second part of what I had in mind. Now what I want to do is actually think about this melody, but instead of just placing it over the top, we want to try to create a more messed up version of this. So if you look at the progression of how this goes, it's going from up to, to it's descending. And so as long as we have something that is reminiscent of that, so we go here and we have this melody. right? This is the progression of how this goes. And so, in means of this, instead of trying to do the exact same thing, we can dance around this a bit and end up in a similar place. So, what I'll do now is I'm actually going to design this melody to this drum beat, keeping this in mind. I'm just going to move it over to the left. And we're going to try to create a variation that is going to play a little bit more nicely to the drums. So I'll do something kind of like this. Oops, something kind of like this. Then we can do a second line here. We can play it with octaves. So now we've got a new melody over this that is right. And something that I want to do is I want this to have a little bit more energy. So as opposed to trying to make the drums better, I'm going to move the snare just a little bit more forward and push this hats just a little bit more late. And this is the kind of thing that I'm talking about with trying to develop a vibe for this, trying to develop the motions and the rhythm of what it is that I want this to be. So let's see if we can get this to bounce a little bit more just from messing with the placement. I'm also going to add some time shift to the melody over this and see if I can get this to come alive with what I have. Cool. So now what we can do is mess with this and um, continue to focus on building out the detail of this and get the relationship of these sounds, because there's only 5 tracks as of now, as tight as possible. So, so within this, we need to make sure that the distance and the spacing in between each hit is creating the kind of push and pull that we're trying to evoke from the rhythm. So if I were to do something like this to where we've got a little bit more space now, so now the way that I'm listening to this is I almost want this to be like boom, right? So right. So now I'm starting to dial in what it is that I'm looking for in order to create the balance that I desire. So with this, it's a little bit off. So we might even just keep that there and let's see what that does. So I'm going to try placing this here. There it is. And see, this right here is a great example of, let's try that. So, and then even for this, we'll move this one over because we wanted to play, either take turns or play along nicely. But sometimes when you have stuff that's laid over kind of like this, it pulls away from the overall vibe of what we're looking for. And so just switching stuff up like this can sometimes be extremely helpful, especially when you're like, it's kind of there, but it's not really there. Like it comes into a matter of kind of just knowing what you want to go for. And then on here, we can go cool. And now with this, what I'm going to do is with this little accent, I'm going to move this into a different sound for that little turnaround thing. Sweet. So this is the easy part. We just need a sine wave for our bass. And we can just use Polymer for that. We're going to go back into segments. I like doing basses like this as a means of, how would you say, the envelope, where it's like here and then it'll fall off. So there's a little bit of hold to it. And we'll go into, let's say, half note. And so maybe we can back off of the tail end of this just a little bit. And then we can move this to, it's in mono. We can add a little bit of glide if we wanted to. So, and then we can try to come up with a bass line of this that's going to match. Cool. So that's a little bit lower than the kick. I just wanted to measure that. But we can create a bounce with this, and or I mean, if you really wanted to, we could just not do that. We could just go, like boo, 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 boo. But you can play a melody if you want to, so. We're going to go and place that back down. And just put something down. It doesn't matter. Unless if you know exactly what you want, just put some data into it. You can always change it later. So yeah, I do think that I want that on the kick. Maybe here. And then one thing that I want to do as well is we're going to make this just a little bit shorter, because it's more so about the expression of this bass and its relationship with when the other sounds are able to come in. But if we can create some negative space, then we'll maintain the impact of the groove. But if this is just like tailing 808s over the whole thing, then There's certain use cases where it can work, but there's also certain use cases to where like it absolutely will fall apart. And I think that this is one of those times for the latter. So there we go. So maybe. Sorry, what I wanted to do was this. And see how we've got that little roll right there? Probably don't want to put a bass over that. And then maybe right here. We can match the note of whatever this is. So that's a G, I think. We'll just leave it there. And now we've got a cool little bass line. And then we can change this up as well. Then we can put like a D sharp 1 on that. And then we leave that open. So now we've got some of these elements together, right? And within this, we have sketched out something that is kind of like a basic halftime beat. But aside from the sounds not being, you know, the best, we can kind of pinpoint and dial back what about this is missing and is lacking. And the first things that I want to kind of explore with you is more so of diving deeper into the compositional things. For example, cleaning up the placement, cleaning up the phrasing and the timing of the bass and how long the tails are, the timings of when these sounds are interacting with each other, and then also like realizing that a lot of detail and a lot of other stuff is going to need to be implemented as well, right? This is going to be a long class, by the way, so now would be a good time to take a break. If you need to, pause the video, grab a drink. But moving forward with this, we have the first main section. We know that it's going to go into this, but I also want to go into what happens if you are wanting to create something that is has more interesting sound or more interesting basses or whatever. And the truth of the matter is that the process isn't any different. It's really just coming up with something that you can either use as a placeholder or still evokes the emotion of what you're trying to convey. So first off, let's go ahead and add some detail into this little thing here, right? Because we almost have nothing. It's literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tracks. I'm not going to be talking about how to spice this up and how to, you know, add tons of layers to magically have a glow up, but more so of trying to use the limitations that we've set on this project to have a better execution, I think is the best way I can describe that. So let's continue. First thing is putting this into audio, I think will help a lot. And you see how even with something like this of removing the tails, it automatically cuts to a piece of silence that allows this moment to highlight. And this is just something that I wish that I would have known about a long time ago, because like bleeds of and tails of sounds overlap and can sometimes rob the feel or the I'm looking for a word to describe the groove being affected, but they are eluding me right now. I need a better vocabulary in the moment, but it pulls away from the impact of it, and it makes it a little more washed over and easy to miss. And you really want people to be able to lock in on every single hit. See, like even with this, you see how there's that bleed, but we have these two sounds in here. And so I think what I might do instead is I'm just going to bounce all of these and make them a little bit tighter now. So again, remember when I was talking about why I work with an audio? This is one of those big reasons, because it just helps me not have to worry about this. One thing that I will do though is I am going to add just a little bit of tail to this. So do you see how much, like how big of a difference that made with the groove of this actually being so much tighter now? Because everything was super loose when the 808 was just allowing itself to bleed over, that it was just like, okay, but it's not really, it took away the push and the pull, I think is the best way I can describe it. Now, because we're working with something that is cutting off right on the marker, the neat thing is that you can go in here and add in some interesting sounds, to which I will talk about here in just a second. But that was like a really good example, and I'm so glad that that happened on accident, because that was the big difference of what made this kind of whatever to, okay, now it actually feels like this has some kind of emotion conveyed to it, or some kind of interesting focal point. So now let's do something different here. And I'm trying to debate on whether or not I'm going to get into like immense resampling or not, but we'll just do like some very basic stuff for now. Let's do like a, sorry, I'm having to listen to this a couple of times, but I'm looking for pockets that I can fill. There's a huge gap right there. And what I'm going to put this in here for now, but I'm going to color this different. And so that way, this is just a little reminder to come back to this whenever stuff is on here. And that's why, like, this is a general tip, but color coding stuff and putting markers like this is so helpful, because you can also leave notes in the comment section and whatnot too. But yeah, this kind of stuff is so helpful, because it allows you to just be like, I don't know what I want there, but I'm going to come back to it. And leaving a little color thing that is a completely different contrast, or is very contrasting to the rest of what's in this area, will oftentimes give me clues if I'm not like hyper focused on like doing something and then getting right back to it. But I just know that within this, there's a huge moment of silence, right? Like if we took this out, that's something that we can put a fill in, or some other interesting sounds, or something else of the sort, but we don't necessarily need to do that right now. I'm still focusing on building like the break and the drum groove of what's going on. So, you know, we can also do stuff like this too, to where we're adding interest with like, matter of fact, let's get the whole thing in audio. for this one, I think that I forgot to move this over. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and do something like this. And then something that I really enjoy doing a lot of times is just making sure that we have a small moment of silence before the next hit, like this. If I'm not going to do a rollover, which that's not a real word, but I'm making it up to where we would do something like this, where it would bounce back. So, you know, but for now, I want it to be a little more noticeable. So right? And so the other thing that I want to do with this is I'm just going to create a little bit of spread here. It's a bit much. Am I on the right one? No, I'm not. I need to be on this one. Yeah, I was wondering why that wasn't doing anything. So let's do that now, just a bit. That's some delay. And then something that I would like to do with this as well is, the reason why it sounds like that is because the delay is at 100%, but we're just going to push this off by quite a bit. And make sure that the ducking is on. And then what I'd like to do is just move this down a little bit because I want it to... Maybe we can make this a little bit longer here. I'm still going to set this to be in mono. Okay. And I just want to change the phrasing of this just a little bit. And then something else that we can do for fun is we can grab like a pitch shifter or something and just make this like -12. Cool. We're going to do the second section now. And now it's just going to be something that we can create some small variations to. Kind of like this. Now, the cool thing about setting up an expectation like this is we don't have to have the notes here now all the time, because we know that there's supposed to be that. And when it's gone, we know that it's missing, but we keep going because we haven't pulled away from the listener for too long. which is a really fun trick to do if you set it up right. So now I'm just going to add some variation to this. So we're going to add another sound here just for fun. Maybe something that has a little bit of attack. And we don't need to be too picky with it. But just something here that we can has a placeholder. Have as a placeholder. Can even do something like this. Can even do something like this where we move this down by 1. Maybe not. Ooh, something that I thought would be kind of cool is if we did something that was like we could do a reverse here or something like this. So yeah. And now we've got an 8-bar loop, I think, or 4-bar loop. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. So we have an 8-bar loop now that has a little bit of variation to it. And what we could do is a couple of things. So one, we can take this and do something like this. And grab another sound here. So I'm going to grab like a shaker. I think we can use a V8 maraca. And we can just add some rhythm to this. Should have had a V8. No, I'm just kidding. But we can do... Notice that there's also no side chaining on here, but we can do like a... Okay. Can move this super off, so... No, I want this to be like messed up. And here, sorry, I was taking a sip of coffee. We can turn this off and go just stop everything to symbolize a change that's coming. So but maybe have like one element. So maybe something like this. Or we can even do something that is like a... Just for the sake of... Wait, I wanted that reverse sound. So we can do... something like this. So now that we have something like this is a transitional period because we've changed it up quite a bit, right? And there's other things that we can use in order to help us build with this. So for example, if we wanted to do something very simple, for all intents and purposes, I'm just going to add a shit ton of distortion to this and some reverb. Just as a very quick... Okay. Now within that, notice that I'm also not using rolling sampler. It's on, I'm not using it for the sake of this video, but not that I'm opposed, it just didn't come out, but I also feel like it's not entirely necessary at the moment either. But what we can do is we can turn this down just a little bit and we can go into the pitch here and be like boop and go like this. And we want that to be like there, so. So now that we've like introduced the melody here, and there's an expectation for the vibe of what the mood is, then this puts us in a great position to go into a different direction. And it doesn't need to be anything entirely insane, but what is an option for us is like, let's say we wanted to go into a quote unquote bass heavy section. We need to come up with something that is going to showcase the rhythm of what we want this to be and make some changes to it without the structure of it completely falling apart. And this is probably the part that most of you all want to pay attention to, assuming that I do a good job of stumbling through this. But let's say, you know, you do want an interesting bass, you know, it could be anything. And before I do that, I think that what I'll also do is mute a lot of this stuff here because I want to focus on phrasing and I want to focus on how to build patterns based off of phrasing in terms of placement and not necessarily terms of, oh, I need a cool fucking crazy neuro bass here and whatever, because the fact of the matter is that you don't. It's more of you want to create an interesting sentence that you can repeat a few times. And the best way to do that is to instead look at this whole thing as an abstract of, fuck, I got to come up with another section. It should be, I'm just going to start with a call and response. And so if we listen to the drum pattern that we've created over this, which let's go ahead and mute everything just for now, and also mute this. And don't throw this away, by the way, because this will be useful in other places that I'll describe in just a second. But what is the groove that we have now? Okay, maybe what we can do is come up with another idea. So Yeah, so now we can kind of switch this up and we can start with the downbeat on this. This is going to be helpful because this could be anything, but because it's already there, it's a nice little starter kit, something of the sort, right? And so we've also got these other sounds that we can play off of. We are going to introduce another one here in a minute, but I like that we have come into a position to where this switch up here is open season for whatever it is that we want to do, and that's the key thing. And so I don't have anything off the top of my head, but let's just pretend like we wanted to do some kind of like, I don't know, wub phrase or whatever. And assuming that you have a little bit of sound design knowledge, we can run into this and do something as simple as, let's just do like a bandpass on here. And we can set this with this ADSR to create something that will be a movement. It'll, the phrase itself of the motion of the bass is what we're looking for, not so much, oh, does this sound neuro enough, right? Because if you notice, we're still making a halftime track, but I've used only the most basic of sounds. And I encourage people to do this because I'm not thinking about sound design at all whatsoever, other than the necessary, like what is absolutely essential. I need to have a sound that is going to go wub or womp or something like that. And that's really like a two-piece wing and a thigh combo with a sound source and a filter, right? So because of that, let's just go ahead and design something very simple within the confines of Polymer, and then we can continue placing that and creating a new kind of rhythm slash quote unquote baseline of what that's supposed to be. So So as of now, all I'm trying to do is listen to this. There it is. That's what I was looking for. This was just a little bit, the pulse width of it was shaped a little bit odd. But we can do this and create something with this that will play along nicely with this. And we don't have to settle on one. Like, let's say we wanted to have something that did this. We can just duplicate this and go, okay, cool. We can create another phrase that, what's it called? That will do something a little different, I guess. So yeah, so we've got three different sounds now, or I guess three sounds that are the same but have different motions attached to them. A fourth one, if you just want to have a sub, which I would almost always recommend writing bass lines anyways. But now we can come up with a single melody line on this, and we're just going to focus on the blue here because what's cool is, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend writing this way. I would wait till you have a sound that you really like, and then when you're like, oh, I need to switch it up, like just duplicating this way for the sake of doing it is not really necessary, because remember, there's also resampling, there's also just replacing the sound entirely with something different, or context is key. But in this particular workflow use case, we can just play off of two sounds for now. And when I say two sounds, we've got the downbeat of the sub, and then we're going to play with this short little, right? One thing that I am going to do though is I am going to solo this, and I want to look at how loud this is. So its peak is at like minus 19, and how loud is this? Okay, so it's close. I'm going to make it just a little bit louder. Now, the reason why I did that is because one like really awesome tip to get everything to work together, especially for basses, is to make sure that they're level matched. Because if you have something that's like super loud and super quiet, and this is supposed to be like, you know, a heavy section or whatever, and it's super inconsistent, a lot of times people are like, why doesn't this shit work? And it's because your like your neuro bass is like, I don't know, -3 LUFS and your sub is -8. And it's like, what? So there is something to be said for keeping dynamics within a track, but I do think that if you can make them be a little bit closer, then they're easier to work with. I'll say that. So we'll go like boom, boom, boom. Sing it out, hum it out. Talk to yourself when you're doing this. Something like this, maybe. Yeah. So now we've got a phrase, right? Boom, whoa, 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 right? Whoa, whoa. We need to finish that off with a. Cool. So now we can do something like this to where we can cut pieces of this and apply a distributive property. So now, just pushing this out because I want the difference of this to be a little bit longer. And then we can just place this here. So okay, right, this is a little bit bothersome because it's poking out a little bit more than the other sounds. So we're just going to lower the volume. Sweet. So now we can introduce some of the other sounds and see if we can, you know, make this work together with adding some layers into it, because right now this works and I like it because we've got all this like top end stuff. So now we can even do this on the second part here. I'm just going to remove that. And then on this guy, I'm going to take all of these and lower this by 12. Or maybe what I'll do is move this over to this section here. Bloop. And we can move this over here as well. And keep in mind that it's really important to remember that we're going to make different sections of this, or like make subtle changes to this. So we have the pattern and the call and response is there, and that's what's most important. But now that we have this consistency and we have an expectation built, we can continue to manipulate it and create the little details and stuff later. And I think that's what's really important to consider within this. So, um, you know, we can do something completely different with this and maybe just give it a color, or sometimes we don't even have to do like a bass sound. We can do something like this. Right. I do want to make sure that we have the same pattern on here though, so can make some changes to it like this. Can even do something like this where we move this off. Right. And now within this, we can, you know, make all of the changes and, you know, do our resampling or switch it up. Over here, we can add a new hat line, or we can go back to the shaker and see if we can start to pull from some of the material that we've already implemented within this. So okay, we've already done that trick once, and I don't want to do that twice. So bless you. Sorry, partner is sneezing. So we can do something like this. Bounce this out. Do something like that. And then, instead of having this last clip thing or whatever, you know, we can kind of do the same thing to where we have a little bit of space for the turnaround here, and we can introduce that first melody that I implemented but may have accidentally deleted. And so from there, we can just write it again, which is not that big of a deal. Oh, here it is. Sweet. So now within this, coming into it, we can actually write out like a melodic bass line. So we can do something like, Yeah, maybe something like that. So now we're just creating harmony to this. Not really worried about this other detail. It's boom, boom. There we go. Then we can lead over with this. Well, and then, sorry, I'm just going to take this and then we'll drag this over to here. And now we've got our outro over this. And as you can see, we have a sketch that took us a little over an hour to write. And it's not perfect, obviously, and it doesn't have, it has very little going on, but it's allowed us to focus on composing and putting things together that are different pieces that we could utilize to turn into a fully fledged track. Also, your CPU will thank you by quite a bit. But had this not come together with, what's it called, with getting the groove right and the elements that really matter with the dance part of it, that's the thing that I think is the most difficult to work with, and what I think requires the most skill to pull off how to not become unmotivated, or how to like not want to quit because it's not sounding the way that you want it to. And so really, like, all of the same things and considerations come into play with this, but you have to focus on, yeah, you really just have to focus on the composition and dismiss the sonics for the most part. Because we didn't use anything. We did very little sound design in this. Now, I'm not done yet. I still need to figure out an intro for this, but typically speaking, what I would do is just pull from elements that are here, you know, and then go into that. But something that we could do is just start with the melody of this and see where we end up. And I'm going to start from bar 9. So that way we don't really waste too much time. But we kind of need to figure out how to go from this introductory idea into this, right? And so what is the main, like, what is the first phrase of this? So sorry, I wanted to do something here to where it's, we're going to back off of that. Yeah, cool. And so we need to just figure out how to get into this. And so you can pull from the original melody because I like doing this sometimes because it foreshadows what's going to happen towards the end. But sometimes it doesn't really work out in that way. Sometimes you might need something that is actually from here. And so if we can simplify this and create drama for this, so maybe even something like this, come up with a new rhythm. And then this is where like effects and all that can really help out. So like, accidentally did too much. Now what we can do is we can grab the claps here and place them here. No. Here. And then just duplicate that. Pull this out. So almost, except I move these somehow not where they're supposed to be. And it is important to make sure that this lines up with this, I feel anyways, because that creates the relationship between the distance of this and this. And if you change the groove, like during the main section, it's kind of like what? Most people probably actually won't pick up on it because we're talking about milliseconds here, but for someone like me, I would catch it. And if I notice it, someone else will. Okay, almost. So let's do this. Just a little bit here, and then let's see how this pans out. Hopefully this works. We're going to do this where we just cut this off a little bit beforehand. And this is the part where you can have some fun because you can do some dumb shit like this. And use your voice for your own voxes and your own ad-libs and all of that. And I like doing this because it adds a little bit of personal flavor to my own tracks that I did, but also it's really fun to just record dumb shit like this. So what the fuck? Maybe cool. So I do want to talk about Vox a little bit more because sometimes these are things that really help the track come alive, especially since obviously this seems a little bit empty. So let me turn this down so that way it doesn't echo as much. But if you can do, oh my God, this is killing me. If you can do stuff that's like ad libs of check, or even like what the fuck ever like you can come up with. Just go watch a Cardi B video and become inspired, or actually don't, because his ad-libs are terrible, but just have fun with it, I think, is the best way to describe it. And remember that everything that we're doing can be replaced and probably will be replaced with other sounds. And that's the beauty of making this super simple. I don't necessarily think that if I were to go in here and go replace replace these sounds or whatever with better shit, that it's just going to magically do this. But you kind of are writing a blueprint out that you can open up a new project and just look at the placement of this and be like, okay, this is the general direction, and remake the track, or don't remake the track, just use it as a means of practice and come up with a better idea next time, and what the fuck ever. But this was the hardest part for most people, right? Which was the basses and stuff. How do we do that? Well, we have to create phrases, and we have to have interesting articulate, or we need to have a little bit more of an expansive vocabulary, I would say, and means of expressions that we're conveying. Sorry, that was really difficult to say. With how to create a call and response that has a little bit of dynamism to it. And I'm not talking about volume, but more so in the means of it sounds sophisticated. It doesn't just sound like womp, 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 womp. You can do that. I think it's pretty boring, but I like having different phrases on here and different stuff. And, if we could even take a step in getting into like the non-essential resampling and whatnot, and actually process these with our plugins and make it sound good or whatever, think about like how much easier those steps are going to become if this is your starting point and you're just trying to improve from here, right? At least that's my philosophy on the matter, and how you learn is ultimately up to you. But I think that if you can focus on the composition and focus on recognizing the pattern placement for the beats that you like to make, and you can get the grooves, then you can give yourself permission to write those shitty ideas and still come up with something that is going to be able to like be listenable, or like it will have potential. If you're just trying to focus on making like your sounds as bad ass as possible, but you can't even really like, you throw a kick and a snare on the 1 and the 2, and then you're like, why doesn't this work? Well, it's because it's not really inspired by anything behind the music itself. You're trying to forcefully apply a sound that you like in a context that doesn't have a world that's built for it yet, or at all. Maybe you're trying to, just like jam a sound into something that has no business being there, but it's like a character that doesn't belong. I say this all the time, but like if you're watching a horror movie, Freddy Krueger or something, and then Dora the Explorer comes out and it's like, hola, can you tell me where Freddy is? It's like, what the fuck just happened? And the immersion of it is not really conducive to the story that you're trying to tell. Sometimes there's a use case for that, right? Like making trash music and all that, that's the point. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. However, when you're trying to create the aesthetic, if you're trying to create something that's dystopian, well, every sound that you make needs to have a dystopian feel to it and have a purpose. But if you were to take away the adjective that describes the emotion of the beat that you made, and we're focusing on, I am making halftime. Well, what kind of halftime is it? Well, it's minimal. It's this, it's this, it's this, it's this. Strip all that away. Look at the placement of how something like that is arranged. Does that kind of make sense? And that's the point of today, is that you don't need to have the most high quality sounds, or even the general aesthetic of what it is that you're wanting to write, if your sole purpose is to get better at writing something like halftime. What makes halftime what it is? In my opinion, it's the patterns, it's the groove, and it's the attitude behind it. And it doesn't necessarily mean that means that you have to have aggressive basses and stuff, but it means that when you have a bass line, you have these certain characteristics and certain pieces that help define what that genre is supposed to be. And yes, some people, if you're a purist, would say this needs to have drum and bass sounds, but dude, it's like drum and bass. Like I can make a drum and bass track doing the same techniques and the same approach, and I will be doing that at some point. to try to hammer this idea in, but this is the core of what goes into music writing, and it's really inspired by a few things. Like for one, my partner, like whenever she writes on paper, and she just uses notation without even hitting play. And if somebody like that can write music that is as compelling as something that's in the world of orchestral or something of the sort, then why can't we use this visual guide with maybe, let's say, a smaller handicap? Yeah, because we still have a sound to audition with, and come up with eloquent phrasing and eloquent decisions that go into the spirit of the composition. Now, yeah, if you're trying to push it into the aesthetic and you're trying to use like crazy sounds that you've never heard before, like that is a skill to be developed, or you need to know where to source that kind of stuff from. But like I said before, the placement of it doesn't change. And that's one of the dangers of just going down that sound design route. It doesn't teach you about this stuff. Um, it's hard to use sounds that you have never heard before. And I do think that there's a lot of truth within that. However, it will help you if you do it this way, especially if you're just starting out, or you need a break, or like you need to, how would you say, like you've got beat block, or you need to simplify and go back to improving on this aspect. Because when it comes into writing a story, you know what I mean? You need a pen. It doesn't matter what the pen is. You need paper, or you need a computer. Are you really like, are you going to bitch about, you know, maybe a keyboard? That might make a little bit more sense. But even still, as far as what you need one of those apparatuses in which to, notate, in which to document the words and the text and transcribe whatever it is that you're trying to say. But it doesn't matter how you get there as long as you get there. Yeah. If you're trying to write a song, then it doesn't matter how you get there. It's just the means of how you get there. And yeah, sorry. I know that I just went on a tangent here, but the other inspiration that this came from was I've been studying a lot of beats from people that I've been admiring, and what I've been trying to extract from them is the groove and the placement. And so I've been, if you've watched this video, which I have, is a recent one, I've looked at, okay, how do I, or like, where are they placing the kicks and the snares, and how do I read these waveforms to look at this notation and look at the relationship of what this is creating? Because to me, it wouldn't matter if it was a tabla or a hi-hat or a snare roll or a fart, whatever. It's the spacing in between that and that rhythmic relationship that feels like that earworm for me that I just can't get out of my head. And so that's the essence of what, most music is based off of, which is rhythm. So yeah, this is a very basic intro. And what you can do is very simple things like automating the reverb. And so, let's say you have something like this, and I tried to avoid automation as much as possible, but sometimes it can help a lot with coming into how to make this happen. So something else that we can do as well is we can automate a high pass over this. There we go. I just wanted this to be audible enough to where we can move that in. And I just remember that we're still supposed to go back to ad-libs and stuff as well, but give me a sec. So yeah. And then now, whenever we go back and we listen to this, like you'll start to have these moments that will jump out to you where it's like, oh, I don't want to do the same thing again. I want to, you know, get into here and do something more, you know, experimental. I like bouncing and reversing because like it's a very polarizing difference between what you heard last time and what you're hearing now, and so it's like one of the easiest go-tos that you can utilize. But whatever audio tricks that you have and like how deep you, or how simple rather, you want to keep this is really up to you, you know. But if you notice, I hadn't used a single plugin other than Pro L2 because I needed to meter how loud whatever it was that I was doing in. And I like to measure by LUFS. It's just kind of what I'm used to. But other than that, like I haven't, yeah, everything has been Polymer or a drum thing in here. But back to what I was saying, sorry, with the ad-libs, now we at least have a functional intro, and maybe, you know, you look back at this and you're like, all right, I just bullshit the intro of this. Now, how can I make this more interesting? You get what I mean? You start to compare this stuff to your own work or to like your own body of what you already have to be like, how can I make this more interesting with the limitations that I have? Sorry, there's so much to teach on this, and I really apologize if this is starting to like, you know, lose focus and go all over the place, but I still think that it's so important to talk about these things because of the benefit that you can get with the right mindset. And that's why this is going to be a masterclass of the sort. But yeah, and so like I was talking about from before, if you can have certain things, like I love check. I don't know why, it's just like one of those hip hop things, but if you can record some ad libs like that, check, yo, okay, let's go. Shit, I don't know, like there's so many that you can pull from. And if you already have ad libs like this, you know, or you already have good drum sounds, then you can give yourself a little bit of a head start, as long as you remember what the goal of what we're doing is, right? Because it's right when you start to get into, oh, this doesn't sound right, that it is the biggest roadblock, at least for somebody like me, of, oh, this sound isn't, you know, isn't bumping right. Or a lot of times I have trouble writing hooks because I'm trying to find new instruments that serve either a timbral / texture perspective that is interesting enough to carry into a main section. Whereas if I were to just write with, you know, just making bass lines for a week straight, then maybe I can just write the intro with the bass line and, you know, turn that into something rhythmic. Or you get what I'm saying though? That's a separate conversation for another time. But yeah, let's just record some stupid shit and have some fun. Yo, check. Ha. Let's go. Ah, ah, ha. Hood up there, playboy. Ha. Brr. Skirt. Doop, doop. I mean, you know, it at this point, if you can let your ego go, this will be really fun. But, you know, if you're over here maybe doing this at the library or something, I might have another consideration or something where Splice or YouTube or something could be your best friend. But then again, who fucking cares? They don't know what it's like being a producer. So, yeah, for all intents and purposes, I know that check is going to work, so I'm going to try that one first. Check. Also, there will be just a slight amount of EQ processing that I will do to this, because no, it's not that so much that I care about making it sound all pretty and whatnot, but more so of this just has so much, it's so much louder and so much more overbearing than the rest of the sounds that I do want to have at least a little bit of blend, a little bit of wiggle room to implement something like this. So check. Yeah, like something like that. It's a good place to put it. So check. 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 And then also something that is equally as important with this, kind of like what I was talking about at the beginning with the 808s, the timing of this and the spacing, or like the duration of the sample of check, needs to be conformative to the beat structure that we've created. Because if you have something that's like check, right, like it's gonna sound, it's not gonna fit. So check, 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 check. There we go. So
Check.
Now we just need to find a place to put that, so.
Check. Check.
Cool. Now something else that we can do.
Check. Check.
Check. Is kind of pitch this up a little bit. Please. Check, please. All right, see, I'm already starting to get into sound design, so I'm going to not do that. We're just going to leave that as placement for this. So I'll do that like twice here. Sick. And you don't have to have a lot of these, you know, but I just wanted to give you this example, because sometimes it can add a little bit of interest when your track is feeling empty. People have a tendency to latch onto vocals, you know what I mean? It's the thing that we're drawn to. Like there's that whole scientific study about like how our ears are naturally gravitated towards like certain frequency ranges because it is the range that babies cry in and all that other stuff, whatever. But yeah, like there's a science behind it. And I think that if you can lean into it and have a little bit of that sometimes, it will give, it'll make it more memorable, you know? Something that I listen to a lot is Cheese Polka Dot, and he's just at the very beginning, do 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 do, check, you know, and I'm just like, fuck, like that's the thing that I can actually sing along to, even though there's no words in the song, but I can be like, you know, check, you know, it's like, oh dang, that's really cool, and so yeah, don't underestimate the power of a vocal, even if it's just a vox. See, there's a moment of oh shit. There's a moment of silence right there too that we can potentially. What is this?
Put up there, playboy.
Playboy.
Playboy. Playboy.
You know, even that like is kind of interesting. So. You know, if we maybe like pitch it down by like 8 to make it more of like a wow. And instead of doing this here, we can, you know, and then now we can start to think about adding other interests to this as well. So I could do something where maybe we have like a V9 open hat. And you see how I'm just going back and being like, okay, how can I enhance this now? You know, we can do like a ride here. It says open hat, but just, yeah, that's abrasive, but that's okay. EQ, I think I accidentally pulled up Pro Q somewhere along the lines, so forgive me, but we want this to be a little bit more quiet. We can do something like this. Okay, now you see how here we have this little thing as well to where like this is we switched the groove and then we left an open space. So something else that we can do that is very notorious from some people that I know is we can change the snare as well. Maybe we'll try the V9. Okay, I'm gonna do just a very quick, very quick. Okay. So now what I'm gonna do is just move this over here and place that right there. And I'm just gonna place the snare here now. Or sorry, a rim shot. I don't know what happened there, but okay. Oh. I was like, bro, what? Okay, let's try that again. And 1, 2, 3, leave that there. Turn these off. These are just like small creative decisions that I pick up on from things that I've realized. But rim shot, rim shot, rim shot, original sound, it's still there. Rim shot, break, goes back into the regular clap. So you know, or even that, like that actually works too. So then maybe we can combine them. But you know, we can do like a long vocal there. Yeah, and like again, going back to the Vox and stuff, you know, it's this kind of stuff is funny because it or I like it because it makes me laugh, and um sometimes it's funny to just like let yourself go and just just do something like this. And so here, you know, this is probably where I would end the track or something like that, because a lot of times I'd like to just do, sorry, I like to just do main section, build on it, have a switch up, have another part here, and make the outro or something of the sort. So if we were to look at the duration of this, this is 22 seconds to 2:30. So yeah, I guess we sketched a 2-minute track or whatever. But the cool thing about this is that you can do a lot of stuff with it. For example, once we get to this position here, which is where a lot of tracks go, we can just use very simple stuff like Polymer, for example. With sine wave, turn this off, turn this off. We can do some kind of bell. And then we can do something like this to where, sorry, I don't know why that got so loud just now. Why is that so loud? What did I do to this? Sorry about that. Was there something else on this? Oh, I must have duplicated it. Oh, I meant to turn up the polyphony. I'm sorry. I was like, what? No. Voices 8. Yeah. And so cool. So we can just use something like that. None of this really matters. Pick something that you like and solo over it. This key is in D minor, right? And it's really important to remember that like you are making music as well. If you know exactly what you want, just put the chords in, you know. But if you have any kind of prowess with playing at all or whatever, then you can keep it super simple. You can, you know, have something to work with and add to it if you want. But the whole point of this is to just, you know, get some harmony in here when it comes into writing chords. So we could do something like this. We don't need that. We could literally just take this if we wanted to. If you wanted to. No, just kidding. And then what I would probably do here is just take this part, or the first half of it, and go like this. And move this over. You can even carry over the bass if we wanted to. And from here, this is where you would create your bridge or you would end the song. And when it comes into moving into the next part or whatever, it becomes the same thing. You know, your bridge can be your outro. It can also be your intro. It could also be, you know, something that helps you get back into whatever, you know, whatever beat structure that you wanted to. But for me, like I like to do these short stories like this because it's like an action packed thing. There's not really a lot of downtime. It's just the beat. And then you can put it on repeat if you want to. But, you know, from a means of getting to this point, this is more so of a connector. it's a binder, and what this does is it gives you the option, or it puts you at the place of the crossroad of, do I want to A, go into another section, or B, in the song. And those are sometimes the benefits that can work out. And sometimes even like if you're like, oh man, I want to take a break right here in between sounds or in between sections, like you can sometimes just take this and pop it in right here in between and space it out. And maybe it doesn't like link the best or directly, but you can take another 4 bars, 2 bars, 8 bars, whatever, to start to slowly introduce this, like with reverb or something. But at that point, what are we doing? We're just creating another intro, right? But we're creating, like, we're paving the road for the next section to come in. And so, all in all, like, once you get to this point, once you even hear, even, um, it just becomes cyclic, especially with beat making. Now, sometimes like you might hear something in a track that has just like a sick intro or like sick break or whatever, and that's why referencing can be important. But when you go into this and you are like, I want to make a beat and whatever, like just reference the structure and then try to create something like it, or write this out and piece these together to where, like, let's say you have a master clip, kind of like so. See how I have a pre-master in here? What you can do is grab everything within this, and let's just do this and throw that within your pre-master. I don't know why that activated all of those. Please tell me they're off. Okay. Um, but on this, you can create the little markers with like, sorry, dude, there we go. A cue marker, and you can label this as whatever it is that you want and highlight this by your section, spread them out and like piece them together in different orders. Or you're like, all right, this all was cool, this doesn't really work, but I want to make the entire song about this. So you pull that out, duplicate it, make variations to it, and then do the same kind of distributive property. And then maybe if you're referencing a track and you're like, oh, there's this really cool part to where there's this like glitch breakdown or whatever, focus on what part of the song that's at. It's at, main section 1, 2 before you go into the bridge, and then do your own little glitch fill section thingy, madoohickey, whatever. Yeah. So I wanted to start with halftime because I think that this is the genre that I identify with the most, from a means of creation and a means of cultivating and composing, right? It's just a beat at the heart of it. And if you can make beats, then you can make a huge range of genres. But to wrap things up, this is how you make music in today's day and age with a DAW. And if you can take away the sonics and just focus on putting the thing together, then you can actually make full tracks or whatever, and then go back and replace the sounds and all that stuff. Now, the big picture here, and part of the inspiration that this came from, other than what I've described from before, is that you can do this on other apparatuses now. You can do this on hardware. You can do this on your MPC. You can do this on an iPad and all that. Yes, you are removing the expectation of your shit's going to sound great. But what are we doing? We are using this as a cultivator, and I didn't waste any time. And this was also something that I was able to like just make without any hiccups. And I was able to talk about this through it with you because I wasn't having to worry about too much. I was saying, I need to just get this done. And sometimes it's what you need to practice in order to get back into writing your big production projects that's going to be your next masterpiece. I'm hoping that, like, in some case, I'm teaching you how to doodle in the world of composition. I think that's a good way to describe it, because you still like have to make a thing, but you don't necessarily have to create your magnum opus or whatever. You just need to be like, yep, shitty sounds, don't give a shit. I'm going to focus on the groove. I'm going to focus on, writing an intro with whatever it is that I'm given. Somebody gives you like a sample lesson, of people are doing that these days. I remember when I went to Boston, what is that fucking thing? Berkeley College of Music. They had these sample projects that were like, put clip next to clip 2. Now launch the clip. Like you're pretty much doing that for yourself, but giving yourself a little bit more material and flexibility to work with and not quite as much direction. So in any case, thank you all. I hope that this video was helpful to you. As of now, I'm not sure. Maybe I'll put this video up for public, and then I will do the next ones with other genres for the memberships. I think that's what I'm going to do. So in turn of that, if you all enjoyed this video, please do me a favor and subscribe. And if you want to see more, then become a member. You can support the channel memberships or check out alckemy.com. Yeah, I think that's what I'm gonna do. And yeah, I'm really excited to give you all this masterclass. I think that it's going to help a lot of people. So thanks everybody. Give me your feedback, and I will see you all in the next one.